Hello and welcome to the third episode of Random Musings. This is a very, very special episode because we don't have a professional stand-up comedian today. We have someone who I got to know as head writer at AIB. He's gone on to start his own company called ATS. We'll talk about it later. But very, very, very excited to call Devaya Bopanna as the third guest on this series, Random Musings. Dev.
What's up? Hi,
Hi, Dev.
KV.
Hi. I
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the show. I'm very, very excited about all the things that we are going to talk about today. Why not? We talked about AIB, so let's start from there. Dave, you've had a very, very interesting journey. From whatever little I know, you used to work in an advertising firm. So you were in their team and you used to do copywriting and like all the usual creative agency things. And then when I met you, you were a head writer at AIB. Without doubt, one of the biggest and most popular comedy collective and comedy channel of our times. And you worked on so many sketches there. And then, of course, post AIB, you started your own thing called ATS, All Things Small, which is doing some wonderful work. You recently also contributed to this very, very viral campaign by Cred, and you did the Indranagar Ka Gunda and everything, along with your team, of course. So I want to start today's episode by talking about this journey. I have so many questions, but we'll just stick to some of the things from a writer's perspective. For example, you're working in a firm where you are essentially getting briefs from a client, and then you are writing copy for them, you're devising their communication, etc., etc. And then you go on to work with this bunch of comedians, and then you start writing sketches. You're writing funny 5 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour sketches, and then things happen there, and then you find your own way and you start a company with like three or four other people, and now you're back, so to speak, to working with clients, and then devising their communication strategy. You're an entrepreneur. Okay, which a lot of people do want to become. So I want to talk about this journey and what are the things that you learned, things that you would want to sort of share with us and our viewers and our audience, and maybe towards the end talk about, as an entrepreneur, things that you learn, do the do's and don'ts. Essentially, this journey is how I want to start today's episode with. Over to you, Dev.
Well, thanks for having me, KV. Really honored. And thanks for making me wear a shirt. That it's been a rough year for my shirts. It's never come out during the pandemic, and finally today I found an excuse. But having said that, it's just I just generally have one policy that I kind of look at when I'm making a major decision, usually a big career decision, which I've had to make like 2-3 times because I switched industries. So every time, like, I just have one filter, which is never make a boring mistake, right? Like, so even if, and I know this sounds maybe nice as a line, but it's not one of those things that people kind of retrofit into their journey. But this has honestly been my policy, pretty much right from day one, because before all that I did my engineering. So to get from engineering to advertising was also a switch. Then from advertising to comedy was a switch, and comedy to like whatever non-fiction media companies a switch. And I've always felt that that's the only filter. Even today, when I have to take some big decisions, or I have to in across multiple formats, I just ask myself this question: is this going to be a boring mistake? And then automatically everything just falls into place. And philosophically I just get aligned and I know what I want to do, right? Like, one instance was like, say for example, when AIB kind of disbanded in 2018, had a good number of opportunities to sort of go into the YouTube content field, because that's what I was doing for from 2015, right? And was in the thick of things, right? Saw the evolution of the internet, and of YouTube. And I always felt that, okay, now what, right? Because everything was all of a sudden. And I could have joined another comedy collective, or I could have joined another YouTube channel. I could have continued writing sketches, but consciously, I didn't want to do that because it would have been like, and then there was this opportunity that came along when I was consulting for like a few companies, and then I was like, what is the next move going to be? And then there was this company that a few journalists were planning to set up, right? This is not even nothing that I've done in the past. A very like journalism driven media company, non-fiction, where we deal with true stories, research, publication, and a different code of ethics, and I mean different code of conduct. This is a completely different field, right? And when that opportunity came, I asked myself, and it was a big year for me, right? Because it was the year, I think, it was the year where my wife and I, we were expecting a baby, our first baby. And so there are a lot of changes were happening that time. So I just again asked myself this question when that moment came, like, is this going to be an interesting mistake? And everything pointed to yes, okay, starting a media company and it going completely bust, with a bunch of journalists trying to do non-fiction and publication will be an interesting mistake. What would have been a boring mistake would have been like joining another YouTube channel, or like doing what I was doing at AIB but doing it poorly for someone else. So that has been somewhere my guiding principle every time I'm confronted with a big decision.
I just wanted to quickly ask you about this field, because the ATS, for example, the company, and everyone who is listening to us can check out All Things Small. They have a bunch of podcasts, bunch of great news website, a lot of non-fiction documentary, and many things that Devaya can maybe talk better about. But essentially, it's still a journalistic, work, but not traditional journalism, right, Dave? Like, it is not a news channel, so to speak, or it's not a beat reporting, or it's not a Twitter channel of like breaking news. It's very different kind of journalism. And I've read some of the articles that your team sends to some of us. I was recently reading about an article about Tamil cinema and the meme culture, which like blew my mind. There was an article about Dil Chahta Hai. There was many, many different kinds of articles. So do you want to talk about like how this journalism is different from the conventional mainstream journalism that we are aware of?
So we don't even honestly look at it as journalism. So essentially we have this media product where we put out long form stories called 52.in, and that's the website. So we look at sort of deep diving into one story every week from the Indian subcontinent to the world. And these stories don't have to have like a timestamp on it. They don't like the one of the filters. It shouldn't be irrelevant after like 3 weeks of publication, right? Like of publishing. So we look at stories that we try to unearth stories or follow stories which lend itself also to adaptation, right? Like it can be adapted to screen, it can be adapted as a podcast series, it can be adapted as a show, a movie. Like for example, Argo was actually first an article that came out in the Wired magazine that got optioned into being made into a movie. So the thing is, my dad's a journalist, I mean, I know that journalists are like, they have a treasure trove of stories, right? Like basically they are dealing with real life on a daily basis, looking for their like first OG content creators, right? So they are like looking for content on a daily basis. So they come across fascinating true stories, right? And in a country like India, I don't sound like a very white person view of like in a country like India, 1 billion people, so 1 billion stories. It's as much as it's a cliche, it is true, right? Because there's so many different, like every 100 kilometers, everything changes. So we're like, how do we monetize that, or how do we sort of tell those stories in a very profitable manner, to the world? So one is like long form, website, a website that does these long form stories. And then what I do with my team is basically take those stories and kind of see how to adapt it to screen, series, shows, OTT platforms, sell it to producers. So it's a mix of that and branded content. So essentially, this is what ATS does.
Yeah. For anyone who is watching this or listening to this, I will try and put the description, like the link in the description of this video. And please do check it out, 52.in. I'm not promoting it because Dave is, but legit, as someone who reads a lot of these articles, I really find them like they are some of the best articles I've ever read. There's an article about Punjabi MC and Mundia to Bach Ke Rahe, and it
Yeah,
is one of the most like research exhaustive article
yeah.
that I've ever read. It was
It's led by Supriya Nair, who's like one of the finest long form editors in the company. She's my co-founder. So yeah, I think all props to her and Vikram and their team actually.
yeah. Okay. One thing that you also talked about in when you were talking about your journey in from engineering to advertising and how this one particular year was pivotal for you in terms of professional
Yeah.
and personal growth is the entire transition from AIB to ATS. But also
Yeah.
you touched upon, and I want to delve deep into it. You said you and your wife are expecting, and now you're a father. And I can't help but talk about fatherhood, Dave, because
Mhm.
first of all, the reason why I want to talk about it is first that I don't have many friends who are fathers. First,
Yeah.
secondly, fatherhood is a topic. Parenting more than fatherhood is a topic that's being discussed a lot in this world right now, especially in our generation. Okay, in the sense that there are so many married couples right now who really don't want to become a parent, and it's normalized to use a very popular word. A lot of people now are like, there's no need to be a parent, or like people say things like, why bring another child to this world, etc., etc. But I've personally seen you evolve as a father. But obviously, you can talk much better about it as to what has changed in your life since becoming a father. Any learnings that you want to share with us? Your views on parenting? Anything that you want to talk about parenthood?
Well, it's a very different life, vastly different from the way I imagined it to be, and I completely underestimated this whole phase of life. Right? Um, uh, I will not lie. As much as it's glorified, and like it's like how capitalism has ruined fatherhood or parenting, is they've just made it such a warm and amazing thing at all times, right? Like there's Father's Day, and then there's a way they portray, like fatherhood, like bring up a child. It's actually, and I honestly fell for a lot of those things, right? And now it's just so different and so difficult. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and much like any job, there are some very bad days. All right, and so it's very weird. I don't speak about this so much online, but yeah, I mean, this is the problem. I think doing conversations on the internet with really close friends. But yeah, anyways, there are some really bad days. There are some really tough days, right? There are days. To be very honest, I question like my choice. Like I'm like, hey, uh, am I? Is this what I really wanted? Am I worth this responsibility? Because at the end of the day, you are like sort of fathering a human being, right? It's this new person. You are almost responsible for the way this person is going to take to society, and like, so there are all those things, and there are days where you fall short, where you are inadequate, you can't give enough time, you don't have patience to answer certain questions, you're busy on your phone. There are days where I'm like, oh man, I'd rather go drink with KV and Vishal, right? These are thoughts that sort of creep into your mind, and then suddenly you feel like, hey, is this like is this normal to think this way? Because content in the mainstream has made this such a white and love your child at all times filter to the whole thing. um, and I mean, I'm talking for myself, obviously. Like, there's my wife who has her own set of thoughts and her own take on this. And sometimes, I think that, hey, am I taking advantage of like my wife? Because am I dumping this on her sometimes? So I just feel that these are things that go through my mind, and like any days, some days there are. I won't deny one thing, right? Is that it is like when I'm with my son, I've never not smiled. All right. So I think I will not deny that. And I will not, I mean, it's definitely not something I'm like, oh man, like, it's definitely not a regret. But uh, you know what I'm saying, right? When there's a task and you can't do it well, you question your ability to, are you the right person for the job? Right? You don't complain about the job, but are you the right person for the job? So I question that sometimes. And that I feel has been, takes a it subconsciously dictates a lot of decisions that you take in your real life, right? It Like I was talking to a friend about this the other day. It's like, you have to announce your retirement from the phase of your life where you didn't have a child. It's like almost like a sportsman, right, saying that, like, hey, hey, that's it, like, I'm retiring, I'm not going to be playing. So you have to like, technically you have to announce a retirement. Like, I can't be that person anymore. I've moved on, right? And I didn't get to do that, while I was, because this is new information that has come to me, and I think I should have treated it better that way. But now I'm kind of, sort of getting there, in terms of being more responsible and not missing out, and not I mean, I'm having a higher frequency of good days, as opposed to like a few months ago, where I thought I was having a higher frequency of bad days, about falling short in the responsibility, and then questioning if I was the right person for the job.
One strange coincidence I just realized is that this week, actually, this past Sunday was Father's Day. So
Yeah.
great, happy Father's Day to a father in the world who's watching it and do it. One small thing that I found very interesting in what you said, Dave, is this thing about a lot of and such is life nowadays, and that's how internet is nowadays. That a lot of people actually use there's no better way to put it, like sometimes their parents or their kids as content.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like your kids are also I don't know, obviously it's a huge topic and we might just not want to talk about it as well, but this is something that I've observed as a third party, where which is something that I don't relate to, but I do see people doing that, where your kids, every step of the child is not just your own personal journey, but it's also out there on internet. It's not the way that you and I grew up, and that's why it's very strange for us sometimes. We legit have difficulty finding our kids photos, in the sense our photos when we were kids. But I don't think your kid, when he grows up, he will have everything documented, especially in your own phone. But there are so many kids for whom this their entire life is out there on internet. Did you what do you have any take on like kids and social media, or like something in that zone?
I mean, see, it's to each their own,
Yeah.
okay? But I never share anything about my son on social media. Not a picture. I don't talk about him as well so much, or I don't think I've ever spoken about him at all, on the internet or through my whatever social channels, because look, we are in the content business, right? This is our work, and we know why we do it, and that is the most scariest part, right? We know why we are on the internet. We know why we post to get validated. All right, like, we can have lofty, we could have, like, intellectual answers to these things, but we post to get a like, share, and comment. All right, that's the primal behavior of the internet, right? And I just feel that that is a cycle, and there is also a good amount of psychology uh, coded into that cycle, right? It is, at the end of it, a dopamine hit, right? You feel nice, like, I'm sure, like, like Tanmay talks about this so well, right? Like, you feel so nice when you see, like, that notification pop up, and you see that heart come up on your notification on Instagram. You feel immensely amazing when you see 10 hearts, you log in, you see 50 hearts, like, it just gives you such a good feeling. And we are in this content business, so we know we love that feeling, and that's why we do the job, right? So I just feel that I don't want my son's life to give me that hit on the internet, right? I don't want to use his life for me to feel the hit, because I know what is going to happen if I do it once or twice is that I will then start looking for content through him to satisfy my dopamine needs and my validation pleasures. I don't want to start using my son, because I'm sure it will become that later. Like, I will get addicted to the feeling of like, hey, this got 1,000 likes. So now let me put up a picture of him doing XYZ. I will get 2,000 likes. And it's not going to stop. And it's, I don't know if this is an extreme, if this is an exaggeration of thought, but essentially it is a drug, right? Social media is a drug. Like, will I ask my son to score drugs for me? I think this is, for me, like at a personal level, it's equivalent, is some amount of, it's equating it to that, like using my son to give me my kick, is that. But I know people do it, and I mean, it's completely on them, and it's, if whatever gives people happiness, like there's no like right or wrong way of parenting. I'm doing 100 other things that are wrong. Maybe parents will look at it and say, wow, like this is a complete no, you can't do these things. So I'll be like, screw you. And it's the same with them, right? Like, this is just my thought. So I don't generally like sharing on social media. Not just actually my son. I don't even talk about like my family. I don't put so many pictures with like my dad, mom, wife. No, I don't do that, because I just don't want to use people who are very close to me as means of content for my dopamine hit. But I see so many people, like, I don't think their parents even know that they are being shared on social media. They don't even know this picture is going up on social media. They don't even read the caption, right? Like on Father's Day, for example, I see so many amazing captions written with people's parents, with their pictures. But I genuinely doubt if that person has told those things to their dad in the morning. All right, on Father's Day, they write a poem like, I really want to know if they went up to their dad, hey dad, happy Father's Day, and then just read out this long piece that they put up on Instagram. Is there so much intimacy in your relationship that you can do it offline, which you are kind of, I feel, faking it online for your dopamine hit. So yeah, I think that is like, I just find that a little weird.
Wonderful. I totally agree with everything that you said. And obviously and you summarized it so well in the beginning, where end of the day, it's all about what makes you happy, and to each his own or her own.
Yeah.
So obviously you and I cannot really comment on what is right or what is wrong. Okay, I'll move on to the next topic that's also again derived from something that you said about being fatherhood, when you said a beautiful thing that once you become a father, you essentially retire from a certain lifestyle. It's like hanging your boots. You're like, okay, had a good run. I had a good run with you guys, scored a few centuries, great career, but I'm gonna be a commentator now, or I'm gonna be a coach, or I'm gonna be nothing. I'm just going abroad. Okay.
I'm going to be
And
an expert.
I'm gonna be an expert. I'm gonna be on the sidelines. I can't play the
Yeah.
game now. And I've been, in your case, I've been a personal victim of that, to not see you in
Yeah.
action for a long time. Which obviously brings me to a very important topic in our life, which is male friendships. Okay, in the sense that you and I have a group, and sometimes these groups are your friends from school or college or professional. Sometimes rare, but yes, we do make friends in professional life as well. And there's something about male friendship, whether it's the ones that you saw in Dil Chahta Hai to Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, to any boy movie, so to speak. And it impacts our life a lot. Do you want to talk about your views?
I was reading somewhere, like, I think male friendships are more driven by events and shared activities, right? Um, Not so much based on, um, like, it's not a very emotional. It's not an emotional relationship. It's more based on relationship, on activity. And then when I look back all right, like at least the bedrock of the friendship always forms from activity. And then when I look back, I realized like all my best friends are people I did, best male friends are people I did something with, right? Like with you, it was working with you, like writing, acting, like it was a creative interest that we perceived together. That was our event. Like I go back, like in my school, it's like people I maybe like traveled with. All right,
Mm.
so I think forming a relationship, I think where male friendship kind of lacks is forming a relationship solely based on emotions, where the bedrock is emotions. Because I meet someone and we're like, hey, we are emotionally on the same wavelength, so let's bond. Doesn't happen as much as hey, we you want to watch a match together, and then
Mm.
let's bond, and then let the emotion sort of trickle in over a period of time. So I mean, this is my very my view on it. I might be fully wrong here, because like I said, I've not had too many female friendships, right? Like deep female friendships for a long time, like in my life, in the most formative years of my life. So, so I feel that there is also something very beautiful in the fact that you start a relationship with not so much with almost zero emotion, right? With a particular event or a particular activity. So I think like for a few of us, it's drinking, right? Like I have so many best friends today who I met while drinking with another friend, right? And then we drank the night away, and then we did like some crazy shit, and then like we happen to meet again and again, and drinking becomes that activity, and then we sort of forge an emotional bond much later into the friendship, right? And or like playing, right? Like you go to play cricket, or you go to play a particular sport, and you keep playing, and then the friendship gets formed. Like you work with someone, it's never really about it's never really about raw emotions.
While you were talking about your life, Dave, you obviously talked about Bangalore and your growing up in Bangalore in a boys' school in tuition, and like your
Yeah.
engineering was also from the south, and and that's why I want to talk about the south a bit because you know there is always an impact, whether it's conscious or at some subconscious level, of where we belong to. Okay, who are we? And identity is on this series also. I'm going to talk about identity a lot with other guests as well. But the point is, you can't escape your identity because it shapes you at some level. I find myself a little bit luckier because my roots are in East India. I grew up in North India. I studied in South India, and I'm based out of West India. So I sort of like got to. I don't know what my like home is. I find myself very neutral, so to speak. But I'm always fascinated with people who strongly identify with certain cultures. I find them very intriguing. Like if someone comes and he says, "Oh, Punjabi, 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 Punjabi," I'm like, okay, what is making him so proud of being a Punjabi? And similarly with like Gujarati, Tamilians, everyone else. Uh, I've seen you as being someone who is very extremely proud of his Kurgi heritage. Okay,
Yeah.
and you're proud of everyone who belongs to Kurg. You feel like it's one big community, and I've seen you take pride in achievements of people you don't know personally, but you identify with them because they belong to that region. And it's not just Kurg, but also you are a very proud Bangalorean. You're a very proud South Indian. I've seen you, and I find it very interesting. It's I don't know, a lot of narrative in today's world is where people find it very polarizing. Sometimes people start criticizing that, hey man, we are all one country, or like, we are all, it's one world, because it's a tricky space. But I personally think it's completely fine to be a proud Indian, and at the same time to be a proud Maratha or to be a proud Bengali. Like there's no harm about it, as long as you don't do anything seditious towards the country, which we clearly are not. But I really want to talk about impact of this is a topic that really interests me: impact of culture and like region in someone's life. So I want you to take me through and take our viewers through, how do you think Kurg or Kurgi heritage impacted your life, or Bangalore or South India? in that sense impacted your life? And yeah.
I think that, like, again, this is my view on it, but I just feel that, cultural identification, right, um, is like a very good insurance in life, where if you like can't make your own connections, or if you can't, or if you fail at sort of scoring good relationships, good friendships, good acquaintances, there is always like a someone you share a ritual, or someone you culturally identify with to make you belong. And that's a comforting thought. Right now, just imagine if how insecure we will be, and how maybe anxious we will be,
Mm,
if there is no place where we can go and belong.
mm,
Right now, so you just imagine the pressure it's going to put on every interaction
mm,
that I have with someone new, to make sure I forge a good equation with them.
mm,
Because tomorrow, if I do not make my own equations and forge my own equations, I don't have a place, like, to go just belong, because I didn't create my tribe, I didn't create my army. Right. And that is not a skill that everyone can sort of possess. Like, you can't be an extrovert, and you can't be like, hey, this is my gang. Right. Like, not everyone's good at like making that gang. And I think for that, I think culture is great. Right. Um like identifying with a region, or
mm,
identifying with custom. Right. It's very like, like, we eat a lot of pork in Coorg, like the very specific way of making pork. Now just by talking about pork, like, you can relate to like another person who has that same shared experience. So I think that shared experience provides a good insurance. If you can't make your own gang in life, or if your relationships fail, that you can always go belong to some place. Otherwise, I think it's going to make a lot of people very anxious.
mm,
Right. And there's also a flip side to that. Right. Wherein it can also make you very lazy, saying that I don't want another worldview, I don't want to put effort into going out and challenging my beliefs, or accepting new beliefs, or accepting new realities, meeting new people, understanding new points of view, because I have my tribe and that's cool. I think that is also very dangerous, where you sort of then just you it's like you living on your insurance. Right. You're not supposed to do that. Your insurance is supposed to save you when things go bad. Right. Like, so I think that is the extreme flip side, where that's just the way I've internalized this whole thing, where it becomes very like dangerous. Right. Like, what you're saying, where you're like, hey, no, this is it, this is the only race, this is the only way of doing things, this is the only custom, this is the only religion. Right. Is when you just become lazy, and not you're not going ahead and investing in new friendship, new equations. You're just falling back on your comfort zone, or into your house. So I don't think, so for me, Bangalore is that. Right. Like, because I grew up there. I think the great thing is that there is no recorded history. All right.
mm,
There's very little recorded history of how we, because we are so unique. Right. In that whole, in our whole neighboring regions, there is nobody who exists like us, there is nobody who talks like us, there are not too many people who eat like us, there are not too many people who look like us, in terms of like our like we are big and well built, and like it's a very different race. So what happens is, and there is no recorded history so much, and it's kind of disputed even in Kur. Like, there is this notion that, like, we are Alexander's descendants, then there are these notions that no, we are like pure Aryans, then there's this, like, so nobody knows, like, where we came from. And I think that is such a great advantage if you want to make conversations interesting and what you want to believe in. It's like, which fan theory do you believe in? Right. Like,
yeah.
so for me, I have a lot of fun with that. And also the fact is that the community is shrunk. Right. I think there are, I think, maybe about 70 to 80,000 Cougs. That's it. Like, so it's already a small community. So the fact that it is small means like there are very few people to belong. So you feel a greater affinity when, because it's not every day you, like if you are like say from if you are like a if you're a Punjabi, you'll meet so many Punjabis. You might probably meet two new Punjabis every day. You might bump into them, even in Bombay. But like with Coorg, like you bump into very few people. So what happens is when it's a small community, the affinity to belong is a lot higher, because it is a very small set of people that you have a shared emotion or shared context with. So so that's why I particularly feel very happy whenever someone from Coorg is doing very well, right? Like whenever say Robin Tapa is playing well, I'm super happy. Again, I don't know if what their thoughts are, or if they belong, if they look at I don't even know how they identify themselves with. Like if say Rohan Bopanna is playing well, like hey man, that's pretty cool. So it's so yeah, I think because there are lesser number of people, the affinity to belong is a lot higher, and so you feel just a good amount of joy when someone from your region does well.
Yeah. Oh wow, yeah. There are just two, three small things that I noticed, which I want to slightly elaborate upon, because it's important for us to understand. And this is just to clarify from both Dave and my part, that it's both of us believe that it's completely fine to be very proud of your culture and
Yeah,
customs, as long as you don't impose it on others. That's where the
yeah,
problem begins. Okay,
yeah,
and
yeah,
especially we should be very proud of our country, which I think has the most heterogeneous in terms of language, culture,
yeah,
customs, everything. And it'll be it's great if you start accepting each other's culture and don't impose your culture on others. And that's just
yeah.
want to clarify from both our parts. Oh, okay, Dave. I want to touch upon our last topic, which actually I saved the best for the last, because this is a topic that's very close to both our hearts. We are talking about nostalgia and content and movies and sketches and etc. Our next topic is Ram Gopal Verma. Okay. And this topic is very, very close to both our hearts. So I'll just give an intro of what I feel about him and what we have discussed earlier offline. And then I'll let you do your analysis of Ram Gopal
I
Verma.
I think KV, I think the first time, I don't know if you remember, I think the first time, I think our event, like in our male friendship, of course there is like working, of course there's like a bunch of things, but I think one of our big events has been Ram Gopal Verma. I don't know if you remember this. I think the first time we ever chilled, all right, the first time we ever bonded and chilled in general, because otherwise it used to just be work, right? We just knew each other as okay, Kumar Varun, like good actor, can make like bad lines funny. Call him, let's just get him to table read and we'll be set. And then we would go on set, shoot, and like we just go back. And it was a very, I mean, it's still a very good relationship. It wasn't like hey, very cold or anything. But I think that this was, I think it shot apps for people, and I don't know if you remember. The shoot went on till I think, as usual, went on till some 11 in the night. Then we went to this very shady bar in Juhu called Fusion, and we started drinking. And I think that's the first time we had gone out drinking or something. It was an extended group, and I remember a lot of people were talking. And then the conversation of Ram Gopal Verma came up. Okay, and I just remember how passionate both of us got about this person, uh, and to the extent that I remember there were some 12 of them in the table, and the 10 of them were like, what is happening here? Like, how did this night go from just drinking and bitching about the shoot to a Ram Gopal Verma appreciation club? And I think, I don't know if you remember, like I think that is the first, like, I think time that we spoke, I think, about something that has nothing to do with comedy, writing, or acting. We were very
Yeah.
drunk that night. Yeah.
Yeah, I do, and that gives me a great segue to what I want to talk about Ram Gopal Verma, because imagine everyone who's watching it who was not there. Imagine a table with like 12 people, and there are only two people who are really passionate about Ram Gopal Verma, the others are not. And there is a clear statistical reason as to why that is the reason. Because Dev and I grew up in the time, and when we started really watching movies, uh, Ram Gopal Verma gave us, we were very young to remember, but we saw these movies later. Shiva, okay, which is a cult classic based out of probably one of the best movies ever made. Then he did Raat, which is a horror movie, okay. Some Telugu movies that I can't pronounce well, so I'll not go there. I'll straight jump into his Hindi
Rangila.
filmography. Rangila happened in mid 90s, 94,
Yeah.
95. One of the best movies, best soundtrack, Rahman's first Hindi movie. Amir Khan, Urmila. Great. I still watch some of the scenes from Rangila because they're too funny. It's a very cute, nice love story. A few years later, he makes Satya,
Yeah.
legit one of the greatest movies ever made in India. Okay. Then he makes these small movies like Con. The entire movie is just shot inside a house. Then he makes Company, which I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm getting goosebumps just taking these names. He makes Company as an unsaid sequel to Satya, which is again a cult classic. Couple of years, and in middle of all this, he's also making movies like Dord,
Must.
okay, which is he's making Mast, and then in 2004-5 he makes Sarkar, which in my honest, like in my very humble opinion, is the best Godfather remake Bollywood has ever made. And then something goes wrong, okay. And then since Sarkar, obviously there is some glimpse of his genius in Rak Charitra and all that, but Sarkar came back, like Sarkar came 16 years back, okay. And that is why a lot of people we hang out with and a lot of people on internet do not appreciate the genius of Ramgopal Verma, and we appreciate that, okay, because in your lifetime and when you start watching movies, he hasn't done any work like that. All you know of Ramgopal Verma is this guy on Twitter and Instagram who keeps posting random things, who keeps posting
Releases
absolutely
theater, random trailers.
random trailers. We don't know what's happening with those movies. He's tweeting about some random things. So we are talking about a guy who a lot of us consider to be the best filmmaker of our times. Obviously, it's a topic of another podcast to compare him with like Mani Ratnams of the world, or like Karan Johar or Aditya Chopra or Zoya Akhtar or Raju Hirani, or like he's also, by the way, given he's been a mentor to a lot of great filmmakers, ranging from Anurag Kashyap to Shimit Amin of the world. But his persona is just completely different right now over the past decade or so. Maybe Ramgopal Verma ki Aag was a big transition phase. Uh, so I want to like pass over the baton to Dev to talk about it. We are talking about Ram Gopal Verma people. We are talking about Ram Gopal Verma, everyone who's and when I talk to Dev, I obviously want to talk about his opinion on him as a filmmaker, but I would love for you to talk about his persona now, or like how PR sort of plays a role in someone's how it affects their work, because nobody right now talks about RGV's movies anymore, okay. And so essentially about image, PR, positioning, and how a career takes a path where you just become somebody very different from what you were supposed to be just a decade back. Over to you, Dev.
Yeah, I mean, so what pisses me off is the amount of, like, he doesn't get any respect anymore. Okay. And like like they say art and all is subjective, okay, but let's just look at the numbers. All right. And I have, like, this is like my favorite 4 a.m. drunk in the night arguing with people topic. So people might be a little shocked by, like, how does this guy know these numbers? Ram Gopal Verma has directed close to 28 movies. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about produced. Okay. I might be like wrong by, like, 3-4 movies this side, that side.
Roughly
But
25 to 30.
yeah, 28 movies directed. All right. I'm not saying like produced. Produced is another whole bunch. Like, you can say another 25 movies produced. And written, for example, that's a whole other bunch. Now, out of these 28 movies, like, you can say like, from Bollywood itself, 11 are cult classics. All right, 11 movies. All right, like, look at, like I mean, just like, I don't know if you can count, like Rangila, Sarkar, Satya, Booth, Fook, Rakta Charitra. Then there is Con. There is what else? Like, I keep forgetting, but like there is like 11 movies that kind of bent the genre. All right, and that completely. And this was during the phase where there was zero experimentation in Bollywood. All right, this is the 90s, and early 2000s, where it was just formulaic bullshit, right? So during that time, he was path breaking and made 11 great movies. And if you count uh, his Telugu path-breaking movies, which there are plenty, like Shiva, Shanakshanam, like, I think Tiruda Tiruda also, I think he directed or he produced. Raat. Raat is a Telugu movie that got, I think, dubbed later. So there's a bunch of like, so if you look at all that, it's 18 movies, 18 cult movies. I'm out of like, say, 28. And if you count his Telugu movies, I think a number goes up to some 30, 32. There's like 18 amazing movies this guy has made. Okay. Now you look at in the same time frame, okay, like say 11 good Hindi movies, like because it's easy to compare and uniform. You just see in the same time frame, like say Raju Hirani today as like, fuck, what a great filmmaker, everything. He's made 6 movies. Okay. Look at like say Zoya Akhtar, I don't know, she's made what, like 3-4 movies. This is from mid to this is like in the last 15-20 years. In 15-20 years, made like some 3-4 movies. Okay. Who are the other films? You like take Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Okay. Right from, I think, in the last 20 years, like in the last, I think more than 20 years, like 8 movies. 8 movies, of which 8 is his full amount of films.
Yeah.
Okay. Of which you can say like about 5 to 6 are like, right, that are massive hits. Okay. So numerically also, like this guy is way like ahead of anyone right now. Okay. But I think gets zero respect because of how, like, sanitized people need to be today. I think like as a society, I don't think we respect Mavericks too much, because again, Mavericks give us anxiety, right? Like, because they're so unpredictable. Like, you don't know what they're going to do next, what they're going to say next, and you always like to see like the downfall, because also Mavericks are never humble, right? So you always like to see their downfall. Like, so I think there is part that, and today also there is a whole PR machinery, right? Like, which restaurant you go to, who you are seen with, you are like present, you have to be present in the most sanitized, marketable form of your being. But this guy doesn't give a fuck, dude. Like, he honestly doesn't give a fuck. He's politically incorrect. Like, I'm not saying that that is cool. Like, I'm not like, I have his, we all have our disagreements with him and some of the things that he says, but he doesn't care. And I think we need to so there is no context while judging people these days, right? Like, this is another version of the internet where I'm sure you also know it. It's like polarization works, right? Like, that's content also. Even when we are making content, we try to make it polarizing to get more engagement on the post. But it's become so internalized now. Like, we also judge things that are, hey, this is shit. All right. Oh my God, this is the best.
Yeah.
There is I think it's a failure on articulation, that we can't articulate how something feels, because I think there's also like, we don't know too many words. All right. And I'm not commenting on anyone's language skills here. All right. I'm also a victim to this. Like, how is the shot? Dude, it's the best shot. Like, how's the movie? The best. Okay, how's the movie? Fuck on. Like, there's no like, there's nothing in between that you share. Like, the other thing that is annoying is GOAT, right? Like, greatest of all time. The number of people who are current day active in sport, in movies, in acting, in cricket, get labeled GOAT. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm like, that is a classic polarization. Like, you don't know words, so like, greatest of all time now, greatest of all time. Ronaldo is greatest of all time, and then like Kohli, greatest of all time, amazing. But how can you compare Kohli to like what we saw in the 90s? All
Yeah.
right, like the pitch is different, the bats are different, dude. So I think
Yeah.
this whole polarization, and that also has kind of led to like the downfall of Ram Gopal Verma, because Ram Gopal Verma's image, because you need context when you're explaining him, right? Because most of the times he's being himself, and he's not being sanitized. So you're like, "Arey, chutya hai." He's a chut.
Yeah.
Like, fucking, he's lost it. Like, films are bad. Like, and he's continuing to create. Like, he doesn't give a shit. And what that has happened is this social media and this whole image sanitization has, I feel, kind of ruined his own career, despite the fact that numerically he is currently among all those who are living the greatest of all time. Like even if you can discount, and the fact that he made these movies when nobody was making Booth, right? Like it was like late 90s, early 2000s. Everything was just like kind of one trope, like, you know, of a love story that looks nice. And
Yeah.
then like those are movies you make today, and you'll still, if you make those movies today, you're called like, wow, like, you know, Maverick. But he made that then.
But it's also, man, there is just so much to talk about Ram Gopal Verma. So we'll have to stop at some point, because there's also an angle that, to be honest, he hasn't really made anything great in the past many years. That's also true. But it's
Yeah,
also, you can't take away the kind of work he has done in terms of like using
yeah,
steady for the first time in India in Shiva. There's a one
yeah,
shot scene in Shiva, which is so long when India, no one had even, like a lot of people hadn't even heard of a like a oneer. And
yeah,
then, of course, Satya had zero star power. The only star in Satya is Urmila Matondkar. No
yeah.
one had heard of like Manoj Vajpayee and Chakrabarti and anyone else in anyway. So yeah, we'll come to that. But thank you, Dev. We've had very, I feel, enlightening and enriching conversation. I'm now going to move to this last fun rapid fire round that I do with all my guests, where the only rule is you're not allowed to think.
Hmm.
Okay, you have to answer
Wow.
the first thing
Hmm.
that comes to your mind. Okay,
Okay.
and we'll then sort of like take a look at all your answers, and then we can talk about them. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Dev, are you ready for rapid fire?
Yeah. Nervous. Let's go
Okay,
for it.
cool. Favorite AIB sketch of all time?
Honest flights.
Worst AIB sketch of all time?
I think worst is like if you rate it like what do you say, like
Yeah.
comparatively, like what
Like,
I
yeah, yeah.
least liked for me, right? Least liked for me would be I think this sketch that called Favant. Puneet and Vishal are going to kill me for this.
I was a part of Fevon. Uh,
I,
Rohan and I still get
I
Facebook
know.
memories. Rohan Joshi and me at a wedding, but we'll come to that. So worst, if Fevon. Your favorite AIB member out of the four?
That's very tough. Tanmay.
Okay. Best RGV movie of all time.
Sarkar.
Best thing about Bangalore.
Brigade Road.
Favorite cricketer of all time.
Robin Uthappa.
According to you, the best cred ad amongst all the ads that came this year.
The fast bowlers one, the OG, we are the OGs.
Okay. Best book that you've ever read.
I think Catcher in the Rye.
One thing that South India has that North India doesn't.
Filter coffee.
Okay, one word about each AIB member. Okay, so I'm gonna tell their name. First word that comes to your mind. Tanmay Bhatt,
Crazy.
Rohan Joshi,
Beautiful.
Ashish Shakya,
Intelligent.
Gursimran Khamba.
Genius.
Cool. That's your rapid fire. Then we are going to go back to all answers now. Okay.
Okay.
Your favorite AIB sketch of all time is Honest Flight. That's
Yeah.
You were not a part of AIB when Honest Flight.
No.
Why do you think?
I-
Why do you rate it? Like, why did it come to your mind above like Honest Wedding, Honest Placement, Honest House Party, the greatest sketch ever? Come on, Dave.
I think it's because I think that's one of the first sketches I ever saw, and I was like, wow, comedy can be done like this in India. I think that was why I think for me, I just keep going back to it, dude, and watching it. Yeah.
Least favorite AIB sketch of all time is Fevon. I know that was a branded sketch about a startup that dealt with rent. I think
Yeah.
I was a part of that. Rohan was there. There was Asim, and yeah. Why do you think it's your least favorite?
I don't know. Like I think the point of the sketch, like kind of didn't like fly with me, and because of that, I never found it funny. Okay, and I was like, and I remember seeing the first cut, and I'm like, oh shit, what is this? Like, I like nothing of it worked, and but yeah, but I mean, it's written by I can say this because I say this to Puneet and Vishal, and I can tell it to them on their face. And also because I think for me they're one of my favorite writer. I think they're like the most genuinely talented writers. I think they've gone on to write like I think some of the best sketches. I'm not trying to save because I'm like shitting on one of their sketches, but I genuinely believe this, and I feel they're so close to me that I can say these things to them on their face and say this here, and I know they won't take it the other way.
Yeah. Your favorite AIB member, you picked Tanmay Bhatt.
Yeah. I mean, I think I worked the most with him
Yeah.
because he was kind of, people were like, I worked directly with him for the longest time. And I continue to work with him even today. And, there are some people who will forever remain your boss, even if you're not working for them. I think for me, that is Tanmay, right? Like, for me, he is always my boss. Even if I'm not, like, right now, I don't report into him or whatever. But still, like, when I see, like, Tanmay calling, I'll be like, oh, fuck, like, like, it's somehow, it's like, oh, shit, like, I have to be like, hey, Tanmay. Like, I can never be like, yo, what's up, man? Like, I can't address him, like, in a certain way. Like, I can never be his friend, right? Like, simply because I think there's way too much respect. Like literally, I think he changed my life. Okay, so where and there's new industry, and even now, man, like anything he does, like he started vlogging now. The whole internet is vlogging. Like he started like he brought this whole gaming content. Like now everyone's doing live streaming. Like he started live, so it's just like so ahead of the curve at all times. He's truly special, and I find myself very lucky to have spent so much time with him, for 4 or 5 years, like on a daily basis, hours together. And I find myself even more lucky that he's someone I can call and ask him about anything, and he'll always like answer like he's always there to guide like most of us. I know even for you, he means a lot. So I think that's why, like, I think for me, favorite will be Tanmay.
Yeah. Best RGB movie of all time, you picked Sarkar over
over everything, because I think there's also memory attached to it, right? Like I remember we had a math exam, it got cancelled. So it was this, okay, it was a Friday, and we had this, I think M3, like it was third sem. There was a math exam, and there was Sarkar releasing. And I was so upset that day that like, shit, I'm missing this release. Dude, I watched RGB Ki Aag first day for show, bought ticket in black. Okay. So, but then I go to the exam hall, the math exam gets cancelled because some dude leaked the paper. And then I rush to watch Sarkar and just like loved it, man. I
loved it. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely loved Sarkar. Like even as a huge Godfather fan, I find it to be the best. So good. Yeah. Anyway, your best thing about Bangalore is Brigade Road.
Yeah.
That
is a man, like I think that is the road that like I grew up in the 90s, right? 90s to I think that is the coolest road for me ever. Like I don't think any road will come close to being cool than Brigade Road, because so even in Bangalore, I think that's the first place where consumerism, like anything that popped in pop culture, right, would pop in Brigade Road first in Bangalore. So I think right from like I think consumerism, brands, anything that came would come first to Brigade Road. And it just has such a cool vibe, man, that road. I don't know, like the energy is so good, and it's kind of a little slope, so it's always nice to walk down a little slope when you're just looking at every new thing in the world that is coming. You find like that shop or that store or something that is coming up over there. So so very progressive road, and it's changed over time, and the energy is still the same. And it's one road where I don't complain that like, hey, there was a theater here, it's not there anymore. Of course, because it's Brigade Road, like it has to change, and that's the charm in Brigade Road. Yeah.
Favorite cricketer of all time? You clearly showed your bias there. I mean, Robin Uthappa is a friend. Love him, he's a great cricketer. But I sort of expected you to say Rahul Dravid, or I don't know, Javagal Srinath.
But yeah, I think it was also because it was rapid fire, and we just spoken about Robin Uthappa. But yeah, and plus this one. So I think I think for me, obviously, Rahul Dravid is like, again, as a Bangalorean, shit, it just goes back to that. But, I think Rahul Dravid encapsulates Bangalore for me, right? Like, nice, effective, dependable. Like, he's everything. Like, if Bangalore was a person, it would be like Rahul Dravid, right? Like, classy. Like, it's what you, it's like what you kind of, it's just right amount of self-confidence and right amount of humility. So and also that all those are attributes that I talk about his game, but
Hmm.
also it talks about him, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
complete team player, some great innings. So wow, yeah, man.
Yeah. Your best cred ad is the one with people. If people haven't seen, please go check this out. This is the one where Javagal Srinath, Venkatesh Prasad, Sabah Kareem, and Maninder Singh and all make an
Yeah.
entry. Can you talk about that ad for like a minute or two, or about the campaign, or anything that you want to talk
So
about?
I think the reason why I think all of us, like say Puneet, Vishal, Nupur, and I, the reason I think we really like that is it just felt like we were in the writing room again at AIB,
Hmm.
because we are writing a song and it's like it's just like in any video, right? Like when you write a song, I think that's what brings everyone together, because you're contributing a line here, someone says a thought, you're trying to rhyme it, you're trying to fit the rhyme scheme, you're like counting syllables, and then you're like trying to make it smaller, trying to make it funny, like. So I think just writing that whole piece together after like AIB was like just so much fun, and we really were like there are pieces of work that I mean I generally don't like. I don't go watch my own stuff, or like it's just like you generally hate it. Like it comes out like, hey, this could have been better. But this is one piece of work we all of us liked, like while we were doing it. And
Yeah.
then when the song came out, we loved it. Like when Karan like sort of scored the track, we loved it. And then when we saw what Ayappa did with it, we are like, oh my god, like it's shameless, but we are mind blown by our by our work on that one particular piece. So I think that was
Absolutely.
insane.
Yeah. I remember having seen that ad before it came out. Like Tanmay sent it to me, and like, oh man, like he WhatsApped the ad. I saw and I was like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah,
god, like best book.
yeah,
And we didn't talk about reading much today, but maybe some
yeah.
other day. You picked Catcher in the Rye above. I'm above anything top of your mind. Can you talk about Catcher in the Rye for like a minute? Or
Again, I think it was rapid fire, so I don't know, like it's what came to mind. But
yeah.
also, the reason I think why I loved Catcher in the Rye, I read it uh, when I was, I think, 19, and I think somewhere I was going through the same things that character in in the book was going through, right? Like he's also finding everything phony. Like phony is a word, like I just remember being like just like phony, like he finds everything fake, he finds everything stupid, he's like trying to figure out his whole life. He's like in this it's his formative years, and I read it in my formative years, and I kind of related to a lot of his anger and angst while kind of reading it. So so I genuinely really like that book.
Yeah. 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 Uh, One thing that South India has that North doesn't is filter coffee,
Yeah,
which of course a lot of South
yeah.
Indians are proud of. One word about each AIB member. Obviously, this discussion can make another episode. So just quick reactions on everything that you said. You called
Yeah,
Tanmay Bhatt crazy.
yeah, this is mad. Like it's it just keeps shocking you every day by saying some mad shit and going and achieving it.
You called Rohan beautiful.
It's just a very nice guy, man. Like just like he's so talented, but like he's so down to earth that you can't believe that he can be so talented. Like it's and he's just like a wholesome person. He's just like a very like just a very nice guy.
Yeah, agreed. You call Shax intelligent, which
Yeah,
makes yeah.
I think that's not surprising. I think everyone like
Yeah.
is like. I mean, I think most of us, our first like I know we've spoken about this. I think our first foray into comedy writing was I think Shaq's column in Hindustan Times, right? Like I think that is like we kind of little grew up on reading on those things, and then it was a little surreal to sit with him and write, and then you realize like, oh my god, like I think Shaq's is I genuinely feel he's such a good sketch writer, like like, it's just jokes can, like, he can just take a normal scene and like kill it with some great jokes. Just,
Yeah,
like, great learning.
totally agree. And I'm going to talk about it when he is a guest here,
Yeah.
because he finds it very sort of like he thinks we are just exaggerating, but legit, it's sometimes real that
Yeah.
we are just friends with Shacks. Like I can just be
Yeah.
like, hey, Shaq, what's up? I can't.
Yeah.
Last but never the least, you called Khamba genius.
Yeah. I mean, so I think he is truly an overachiever, dude. Like, with so one of the few people who also, it's not just comedy, right? Like with him, his grasp on culture, his grasp on academics, his grasp and his take on everything, like, it kind of like shocks me that one person can be like some 5 6 people put together into one person. Like, you know what I'm saying? His worldview is like so good. Like writing, I mean, also again, like writing with him, like I think he's the least that I worked with at AIB, because he was also working on a show when
Yeah.
we were like working. But the every time I worked with him, I've just like left the room feeling very inadequate. And I think I'm like, oh my god, I have so much catching up to do. This guy's
Yeah.
just like, he's just so natural.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings us to the end of the episode. Dave, thank you so much for being a part of this. The range of topics that we discussed is really overwhelming, and I also believe that there are just so many more episodes that can come out from our conversation, but there is obviously a time limit. But maybe sometime soon. But thanks, Dave. Means a lot to me that you came and shared things. You shared about fatherhood for the first time anywhere. So
Yeah,
very humble that you made this a platform where you talked about your kid and everything else.
not at all, man. Like I think it's like basically I feel that like it's like how you say, like I'm friends with Shax. It's like I'm friends with KV. Like, I think this is that for me, where because I've seen you guys right from when y'all were like literally nobodies, right? Like and like just seeing your journey has also been super inspirational, like with what Rahul and you have done. And I was so honored actually when you said like, "Hey, can you come?" I was like, "Oh, me? Like, yeah, sure." I think I'm the least famous friend you have. So, and you still call me. So, thank you so much.
No, no. I'll call Vishal Dahma for the next episode and then
You
he'll
are.
be.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Like, I won't be the least famous guy on Random Musings.
But thanks, Dave. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks so much.